So we are here with Judy, and we met in a Facebook group for Childless Not by Choice Women. I can't recall the name of the group. I don't think it matters. The thing is, we hit it off because we see this victim mentality in our community. And we realized, chatting with each other, that we both were there. Like, why the fuck did we hate so much? I'm stuttering, so Jody, do you want to say something?
Yes, so good morning. I'm in New Zealand and Laura is in Argentina. So we've managed to put together this podcast together. Laura and I were talking about how we felt at some stage in our journey that somebody should come along and rescue us. And we sat in a place of bitterness, anger, misery for such a long time. And we just weren't friends with ourselves. We realised, and this was our common conversation, is that we didn't like ourselves. And it really opened up a dialogue about when we get to the depths of our CNBC grief, what a cloud of misery that we live in, and how if we don't like ourselves, probably nobody else is that keen on us either. And we feel that we haven't got friends and we can't make friends. But if we're
And
not
everybody
friends
is
with
to
ourselves,
blame.
yeah. And if we can't be friends with ourselves, how can we be friends with anybody else? And we lived, both of us, in this blame culture. And we found it really interesting. So we wanted to hop on here today to talk about it, to see if it resonated with anybody else.
So yeah, I realized I was starting to be alone. Not lonely, not just lonely, but people will was pulling away from me, and I was like, why aren't they replying my messages, or why any that doesn't anyone want to see me? And somebody told me, like, you are always so bitter that it's hard to be around you. And that was the slap in the face that I needed. I that snapped me out of that. And I realized I was this angry person that was trying to control everybody, not just for them to rescue me, but also they needed to behave the way that I wanted.
Mm, mm. Oh, that completely resonates with me. And I wish that somebody had come along and given me that slap, because I was waiting for that rescue. I don't know who I thought was going to rescue me. And I probably waited there for about 2.5 years. And I know I'm laughing about it now, but honestly, I wasted so much of my life in that space of self-pity. And it really was self-pity. Why was everybody else's life so great? Apparently, it probably wasn't, but that's how it looked. And why was my life? It was black and white, there was no color in my life. I lived inside my head. My focus was inwards. It was all about me and about how miserable I was and about how dreadful my life was. I
And
didn't
how about
realize I was.
everybody do things to you and not just do things, and you are interpreting them like they are doing them to you? That happened to me.
Yeah, exactly that. And I thought I would never feel happy again. I felt worthless. I thought that I had no good future out there. And then one day I realized it's only me that could make me happy. Nobody else is going to do that. And I could have slapped myself for that because it was in my control.
Yeah, I think that's what most of us struggle, is that the only control that we have is in ourselves, in what we think and what we feel and what we interpret about everything. Because I see a lot of posts saying things like, my sister-in-law talks about her kids nonstop, and I feel it's natural. But if you never tell her like, this hurts me, she won't know. But people try to not try, they expect the rest of the world to understand and be empathetic and change their ways. And when they say something, they say it not in a kind way, in a way that can actually become in an empathetic point of view from the other side. It's like, I want you to stop talking about your kids. Instead of, look, I know your kids are your pride, and I would be proud also of my kids if I was able to have them. Can we please find more topics in common? Or something like more i- in agreement, you know? That was the first step I did actually. Like meet meet the other person halfway, you know?
Mm. And I think one of the things that I realise now as a grief educator, as well as working with people that are CNBC, is that we deal with every aspect of grief badly. But when we're in our own grief, what we see is that people aren't empathic with us in that CNBC space. But we're not empathic with somebody who's lost their dog, or somebody who's retired from a fulfilling career and is really feeling it. We say to them, go and get another hobby. We're not empathic with any loss. And so when we're at the real depth of our CNBC grief, which is where we were talking about we were when we felt like a victim and that we felt that nobody was supporting us, what we really needed to have was some grief education so that we understood why we felt like that, because we didn't understand that this was the depths of our grief. And so if we don't know why we feel like this, we can't do anything about it. And so that education about grief is actually the key to helping us find our way forwards.
Yeah, but I think, at least in my experience, I encounter women that they have processed a lot of their grief, but they're still waiting for the rest to change, for the rest to understand, for the rest to see her as the one that needs protection. And a lot of them don't show empathy for the rest, and they are screaming for empathy when they aren't given that. So there's that's both of that is understanding your grief and also being empathetic with everybody else's needs. It's not, we don't need to be against moms or against the world. I think
Mm.
talking about this and getting a voice for what we are feeling helps us with the grief and helps us for others to understand what we are feeling and not trying to control what they are saying or what they're doing or how they are showing their life. Because I don't know if you are ever question yourself this, but if I was able to have kids, would I be so empathetic with a childless not by choice women? Would I know what she feels? Would I not talk about my kids? I think
No.
that we need to start working on ourselves, on our grief, and on our communicating and voicing our needs in a more not confrontational way, not
Well, and
screaming.
also the fact that we're expecting people to understand what we're going through. Right this minute, I don't know how you feel, Laura, because I don't know what you went through before our conversation. I don't know what's going on in the background in your life. No one of us knows at any given moment how
Yeah,
somebody else is feeling, even our nearest and dearest. So,
yeah,
why would we think that anybody else understood how we're feeling? And I think we can see this with grief relating to death when, a friend of mine, when her daughter was in her mid-20s, lost her father. And she also lost her friends because her friends couldn't understand why she wasn't going out with them, why she wasn't wanting to engage in the same way as she had done. And it was only one of them lost their father about 7 years later. They said, God, I'm so sorry that we dropped you. Only now do I understand what you're going through. I think what we're really talking about here is acceptance of the fact that we feel as we do. We cannot ever expect anybody else to understand how we feel, even if they're in an exact same situation, because they're not us. And we have so much expectation that I'm really hurting, so everybody else should be able to see that. And they can't.
yeah, I completely agree. And that's why the shifting of our perception that we were talking at the beginning is important, because we need to rescue ourselves and not expect everybody else to change, because we only have the power to change ourselves and to some degree control our thoughts. That thoughts led to emotion, and emotion led to actions, and so on, we need to start loving and understanding ourselves, and then start giving that back to the rest of the world, instead of asking, and sometimes even really violently or aggressive, asking for someone to understand us and to rescue us and to be the way we want to be.
Mm. And you hit upon something very key there. You said about where we can only change ourselves. In the end, if we like who we are, and we had that conversation where we decided at a stage of our grief journey we really didn't like ourselves, but what we've done is that work to be friends with ourselves, to be our own best friend, to like who we are.
Yeah.
We have to leave everybody else to come to that realization about themselves if they ever do. And one of the things that I think is one of the massive benefits of the CNBC journey, and there has to be some, let's face
Yeah.
it, is the fact that we have a lot of realization, and realization comes up constantly here because when we have self-realization, that triggers us to take some action because we see something and we think, is that authentic to me? Is that within my core values? Is that who I want to be? So we can become who we want to be. What others do at that point is their own journey. And sometimes we lose people on that journey simply because we no longer align. And that's part of life. But if we can be happy with who we are, that's
Yeah.
really important.
The only person we are going to be with since the minute we are born to the minute we die is ourselves. And yeah, I think one of the perks of not having kids is I have the time and the space in my head, I mean, for self-improvement, for sitting with myself and say, you're being you're being a bitch. Stop complaining. What are you complaining about? Okay, let's see I can do about it. Not why, no, what can I expect? What everybody else can do? It's just me, and that is a perk. I, I,
A huge perk, yes, indeed. But in the end, it's our ego that holds us back from living our best life. It keeps us in that past. We hold on to that dream, that identity, because when we let go of that dream, we're taking that huge leap into where? Where are we leaping into? It's a future, but it's a future we can't picture. It's a future we've never seen, and it's a journey of exploration and discovery. And there is a lot of good exploration and discovery, but some of that exploration and discovery is within. And if we don't like what we see within, it can take us straight back. That ego takes us straight back again because it's not letting us through that door.
Yeah, I think a great part of going through the grief is letting go of the identity we build in our head about being a mom. And I love to see a lot of decluttering videos, and I'm bringing this because it's like that we let go of something so we can hold on to something else. We can't have everything. So yeah, we need to build something new. And it doesn't mean plan B or that is less. It was not planned, but it doesn't have to be worst.
Mm. And if we cling to that past, we can't move into a future. We can't build that future and find that joy and fulfillment. And I know it's frightening to move forward, and it's that fear that's just holding us back. It is a risky feeling. It does feel uncomfortable. But do we want to stay in that place of hurt? How's that serving us by gripping us there? You know, we need to release that and say, I personally want to live the rest of my life in a place where I can feel fulfilled. And we have that choice. And I think the day that things changed for me was the day I realized that I had a choice.
Yeah, I don't want to disrespect anyone that is still going through the grief, but holding on to that grief so much, and it's just having being right but not being happy or finding joy just because you are clenching your fists to I wanted to be a mom. And I don't know where I already said this, but I think grief never completely goes away. There are triggers for all of us, but it gets so much lighter when we are joyful and we have other things that are good in our lives.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that holds us back, you mentioned it at the start, is those feelings of isolation and loneliness. We can be lonely in a crowded
Yeah.
room. The isolation, it's a lot of it's in here, isn't it? And we feel like we're the only person to face these issues. And yes, we are the only person to face those exact issues because we're all unique, aren't we? But we are, the CNBC group is somewhere around 18% of people that haven't had, a childless by circumstance. There are 18% of the female population or 18% of the population who get you, who have a similar experience. And therefore, we aren't the only people to have gone through that, and we need to just just flick that switch and understand that that is a large slice of the population, and we can reach out to other people, and there is support. And we had the conversation, didn't we? God, I would have loved it if there'd been some support, such as the support that we give our clients when I was on my journey. And that's why we both become therapists in this
Yeah.
arena. For exactly that reason, is to help those people, to journey with them, to support them, to say, I get you, you know?
But I also feel like, as you said, the isolation was in my head. So I wonder what it would happen if I found a group in my self-loathing period, if I would hold on to that group, because I maybe would feel like, no, they don't get me either, because they are not saying, oh, your mom who should change, your neighbor should change, your instead of like s- change your perspective, change your frame, your mindset.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and this is something we also talked about is that social anxiety that we get. Suddenly we've lost that sense of self. If I'm in a social group, what am I going to talk about? I don't fit in. I don't have a family. I don't have a partner. I haven't got that group of friends. And suddenly we're setting ourselves so mentally aside that when we go to a social situation, we're giving off that vibe of, well, I haven't got anything to talk about because I don't do anything because I'm on my own. And we felt like that. I know we
Yeah.
felt like that. This isn't something that just you, the listener, feels like. We felt like we had nothing to talk about.
And my face, I'm so, I can't lie because I'm so honest with my face. And my face was, I don't care about what you're saying. You don't understand me. So I couldn't ask someone to just come to talk to me because I was like, you know, it's
Well, and
hard to talk.
your mind's a blank.
Yeah, but it's hard
Mm,
to ask someone to come to talk to you when you are projecting that, like, nobody
mm.
understand me.
Mm. But so when we talked last, we said about having some solutions with you, didn't we? Like this is about how can you cope? And one of the things that people can do is literally pre-plan some of their conversation, come up with so what was the last great restaurant you ate at? Or I heard you just say that you were going on a trip. Or I heard you talk about
The
going
like
to a show
or the
or
latest movie or book or yeah.
right, right, or what's the latest hot topic? Try and avoid politics, but you know,
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
but having some questions, even if they're on a post-it note in your pocket, you have to turn away, look at your post-it note, put it back in, go with something, and we talked about coping mechanisms, and Laura, I think, will put a link to my coping mechanisms
Yeah.
free handout below this podcast, just so that you can download it. You can have some things that you can call upon when you're in these situations where you suddenly find yourself anxious or overwhelmed. If we can find some tools to get ourselves through these things, then we don't then regress to that anxiety and panic and isolation in a corner and think, God, I've got to leave now because I can't talk to anybody. We can actually give ourselves the tools to get through those social experiences.
Something I did was to my closest friends, I talked about, okay, I realize this that I'm feeling is grief over not being able to be in a mom. So if we are in a social situation where someone is getting too much into that topic, please rescue me. And they did. Like when someone started
Mm,
like, when are you having kids? The clock is ticking. They would interject something that it wasn't obvious that I was hurting, but also like move the conversation elsewhere. And that is actually something I urge everyone to do. Like have at least one person that can save you in those situations
mhm,
where
mhm,
like, because my mind went blank in that moment. Like when someone asked me, "When are you having kids?" It was like, I choke. So I needed,
mhm.
but it's not the same at rescuing from my own life. It's just one situation, and then I can be prepared for the next one. And I grew more confident about that, and now I have my own answer to that question, and it's not aggressive, but it's not also like a poor me thing. Is no, I couldn't have kids. Do you have any problem with that? Because I'm happy either way. And sometimes, depending on who is this person, I say, but I have three pets, or but I do something that brings a conversation like flowing. It's not like, no, I couldn't. And, you know,
Mm, mm. One thing I talk about with my clients is when, there's those obvious bingo moments, those comments that we all dread somebody
yeah,
making is when somebody has an opening question of, do you have kids? It's generally because their focus, the lens that they look at life through, is so narrow. And if we can just take a moment to think, this person has no conversation, let's teach them the art of conversation and let's go down a completely different route. And that can feel empowering because one of the things we don't feel when we're CNBC is that we have any power. We feel like a lesser person. We're looking at that world in black and white, not technicolor. We don't feel valued. We've lost some confidence or whatever. But just being armed with something that we can use, like having your list of conversation topics or whatever, and realizing that that person asked that question because they don't have a good conversation either. And, so introducing them to something else. No, I don't have children, but I really love to travel. Let me tell you about my last trip. Watch them squirm. Because if somebody's going to ask you an intrusive question, which it is, it's intrusive, because they're basically asking you, if you haven't already got children, are you having sexual relationships that are going to produce a child, aren't they? Where's your child? Are you in the process of producing one? That's an intrusive question when you break it down into its parts, isn't it?
yeah. I also, like, for a time when I was starting in the NBC, NBC, child is not by choice, sorry, um, space, I would ask other women, have you, do you have kids? And because we are so conditioned that womanhood equals motherhood. And in my group last week, we were talking about this. I don't ask anyone that question. And a lot of times it doesn't even come up. I don't know if a woman is a mother or not. Because there are a lot of mothers out there that their life don't revolve around their kids solely, you know? So it's what you were saying. A lot of the don't you have kids question is that person is she hasn't has any dimensions in her life. She is just a mother. And I actually feel kind of pity for them because
Yes.
I wouldn't like to be that mother either. Like I would,
You're, yeah. You're absolutely right there, Laura. And that's something that I feel those people who say, but my biggest achievement is my three children. And you think, when you look at the statistics of how many people are estranged from their children, and obviously we live internationally now, and your children might be all over the world, as many people I know have,
yeah,
then actually, although your children were your biggest achievement, you can feel so isolated when they go on the path of their life. Their journey can take them away. And also, if your biggest achievement was your children, it's likely that you smothered them,
yeah,
and that they really want to spread their wings and escape. So suddenly your biggest achievement becomes your biggest worry. And as you say, what full life is that person going to have their focus has only been their children.
Yeah.
They dread them leaving home. They do everything they can to keep them within the family unit. I have a friend who does exactly this, who is dreading their last two children leaving because they've not worked for 25 years. They don't have
A life
those
outside.
other things in their life, and so they're gripping that with both hands because what am I going to do when my children go? And the one thing we've got is more of the rest of our life set up
Yeah.
because we haven't had a choice. We've had to do it.
Yeah. I don't know if we didn't have the choice. We didn't have kids, but we have the choice to change our mindset to well, I don't have kids. I still want to feel fulfilled and that my life has a purpose because I feel that that is a choice.
Mm, mm. Yes. And otherwise, we can stay back with the ego in that depth of fear
Yeah,
and making that choice to move forward and embrace that future is all important to us feeling like a complete person ourselves.
yeah, yeah. I think that is a choice. And I hope everybody does that choice, not just childless, but everyone.
Mm, I completely agree. And one of the things that we touched upon previously was we spent a good deal of time in self-criticism about the choices that we'd made, the path that had led from wherever it started to us being childless and the roles that partners, parents, and all manner of people had played in our journey and how angry we were with ourselves and angry with those people and bitter, envious, all of those sorts of things. And one thing I know that helped for me, and it took me quite a while to embrace this, was forgiveness,
Yeah.
was just saying, I've done things to hurt other people that I will never know about because they've not told me. I've done things to hurt myself. Other people have done things to hurt me. And largely, I don't think that was intentional. It was they were doing the best they could at the time. Even if they weren't doing the best they could at the time, that's what happened. And actually forgiving all of those people that played a part in me getting to being CNBC, including myself, I've forgiven. And that just lifted a weight off me. It made such a difference. It was such a relief to me. And forgiveness doesn't come quickly, it doesn't come easily. But when we find it, it makes such a difference to who we are and how we feel.
Yeah, sometimes like I didn't know how to forgive, but I was in my inner dialogue was this, I don't know how to forgive you, but I want to forgive you, so I'm working to forgive you, you know? And that instantly was like a relieving sensation, starting to at least have the intent. Because it's sometimes it's not easy, and I get that. And with that intent, it comes like for me, it's like a muscle forgiveness. You know, you start forgiving something small, and the intent to forgive something huge, and you start forgiving this small thing, and I'm going to get there. And in my case, one day I realized, oh, I have forgiven this. I already forgiven, and I don't know when exactly. There wasn't a moment that now you're forgiven, and it also started to f- I started to feel like I have forgiven myself for a lot of choices that led me to be childless.
I agree. I mean, I don't know when I forgave certain aspects, but even sometime this week, I thought back on somebody who'd been instrumental in some of the really deep grief that I experienced. And usually when I picture that person, which isn't very often, I would still feel that hurt. And I
Yeah.
pictured them this week, and there was no hurt attached to the memory. And I think some of that is realizing what other people were going through at that time, because when we feel the hurt, we can't think about what may have influenced their behavior. And actually, when we look at it, they were going through a traumatic time or they had experienced grief, and the reaction they gave to us is as a result of the grief that they were feeling. So, how in our grief can we remain bitter with them
Yeah.
when their actions were influenced by their own grief? And that was a way for me to find some forgiveness, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't usually think they in the term grief, there was their own grief. I think it was their fear of whatever experience they have. Maybe they were feeling unloved or judged, and they reacted the best way they could. It's not a justification. I'm not going to let somebody punch me because they are having a shitty day, but it's a way to understand and forgive. Because I have my
Mm.
shitty days too.
Mm.
So it's I'm not I'm not saying let somebody abuse you, remove yourself from that equation, and then okay, I see you are scared, or I see you're grieving, or I see you're hurt. I forgive you. I don't have to still be with you, but I forgive you.
Mm.
And for me that's been real relief.
Yes, entirely. I think that was one of my biggest reliefs, was being able to say, I forgive what has happened. And it allows you to trust, I think, more going forwards. Otherwise, we use that judgment from our past to affect people in our future. And
Yeah.
that person in our future does not deserve that judgment that attaches to our past experiences. And we just need to be open to it, because if we think negatively all the time, we attract negativity.
Yeah. Yeah.
If if we think if
Yeah,
we think
I'm convinced.
everyone's going to hurt us.
I'm convinced we are magnets. That our energy is a magnet, and yeah, we attract that.
Mm. And if we project happiness, we tend to surround ourselves with people that are happier. Happiness is a difficult one, but we attract people that are positive, people that have fun, people that want to share those experiences that we perceive are happy, the joyous
Yeah,
experiences.
yeah, completely. Yeah, completely agree. Shadi, it has been a pleasure. I hope we record another episode sometime in the future, and of course, we keep in touch. And I will leave the description in the description your all your information.
Thank you, Laura. It's been lovely talking to you this morning, as always.
Thank you.